The reflection in the window glass is what catches my attention first. I stand frozen in the hallway of our home, grocery bags hanging from my hands, as I watch my husband Elias through the living room window. He doesn't know I'm early. He doesn't know I'm here at all. His back is to me, but I can see her perfectly. Naomi Chen, my friend, my colleague, the woman whose face my husband now cradles in his hands with such tenderness that my stomach lurches. His thumb brushes her cheekbone. I've felt that touch 1,000 times. Naomi's eyes close, her lips parting slightly as she leans into his palm. The grocery bags slip from my fingers. The sound barely registers as oranges roll across our porch. My hand trembles as I reach for my phone, unlocking it with unsteady fingers. I open the camera app, switch to video, and press record. This is the moment my life splits in two. 2 months earlier. Earth to Vanessa. Hello, the Henderson file. I blinked rapidly, surfacing from my thoughts to find Naomi leaning against my desk, a manila folder extended toward me. Her dark hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, her maroon blazer impeccably tailored. We'd been working together at Matthews and Donahue Legal for nearly 3 years now, both of us vying for the same senior associate position. Sorry, miles away, I said, taking the file. Thanks. Everything okay? Naomi tilted her head, concern etched across her features. You've been distracted all week. I hesitated. Naomi and I were colleagues who occasionally grabbed lunch together, not confidants who shared intimate details. But something in her expression made me answer honestly. Elias and I struggled to find the right words. We're in a rough patch. Elias, my husband of 6 years. We'd met in law school, got married right after graduation, and had been building our lives together ever since. The early passion had cooled, but I'd never doubted we were solid. Until recently. I'm sorry, Naomi said, perching on the edge of my desk. Do you want to talk about it? It's nothing dramatic. No affairs or screaming matches, I said with a forced laugh. Just distance, like we're roommates more than partners. Have you tried counseling? I shook my head. Elias doesn't think we need it. Says it's just a phase, that we're both busy with work. Naomi nodded sympathetically. Men can be stubborn about these things. What about you? How are things with... I trailed off, realizing I couldn't remember if she was seeing anyone. Oh, I'm perpetually single, she said with a dismissive wave, too focused on making partner to maintain a relationship. Our conversation was interrupted by the arrival of our boss, Charles Matthews, who swept through the office with his customary energy. Vanessa, Naomi, the Wilson case. Conference room, 5 minutes. As we gathered our materials, Naomi touched my arm lightly. We should get coffee sometime. Outside the office, I smiled, genuinely this time. I'd like that. The key turned in the lock at 7:45 p.m. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been preparing a brief for a case. Hey, Elias called out, shrugging off his suit jacket. My husband was handsome in an understated way. Sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead, kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled, a dimple in his left cheek. At 34, he still had the lean build of the college swimmer he'd once been. Hey yourself, I replied, closing my laptop. You're home early. He leaned down to kiss my cheek, a gesture that had become routine. Court adjourned sooner than expected. Have you eaten? Not yet. I was waiting for you. A flicker of guilt crossed his face. You shouldn't have. I grabbed something with the team after we wrapped up. Oh. I tried to hide my disappointment. No problem. I'll make myself something. Elias sat on the couch across from me, loosening his tie. How was your day? Fine. Working on the Henderson case with Naomi. Naomi... He paused, his brow furrowing. The one with the ponytail? You've mentioned her before. Yes. She's in the running for the senior associate position, too. Right. He nodded, then stood and stretched. I'm going to take a shower. As he disappeared up the stairs, I sat in the silence of our living room. When had our conversations become so perfunctory? When had we stopped sharing the details of our days, our thoughts, our dreams? I couldn't pinpoint the exact moment, just as you can't pinpoint the exact moment a flower begins to wilt. Later that night, I lay awake beside Elias, watching the shadows play across the ceiling. He slept deeply, one arm flung above his head. "Are you happy?" I whispered to his sleeping form. He didn't stir. I wasn't sure I wanted to hear the answer anyway. The coffee shop was busy for a Wednesday afternoon. Naomi had suggested we meet during our lunch break at Cafe Aurora, a small place 2 blocks from our office. "I come here almost every day," she said as we settled at a corner table with our drinks. "Their caramel latte is life-changing." I took a sip of mine and had to agree. "This is fantastic." "So," she said, her dark eyes studying me over the rim of her cup. "How are things with Elias?" I sighed. "The same. Maybe worse. Last night he came home and barely said 2 words to me before disappearing into his home office until midnight." "Has he always been like this?" "No," I said, tracing the rim of my cup with my finger. "He used to be present, engaged. We'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. Now it feels like pulling teeth to get more than one-word responses." Naomi nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes people change, and we don't notice it happening until they've become someone else entirely." "That's exactly it," I said, surprised by how accurately she'd captured my feelings. "It's like I woke up one day next to a stranger." "Have you asked him directly what's going on?" "I've tried, but he just says he's tired or stressed about work." I hesitated. Part of me is afraid to push too hard. Like if I force him to talk, he'll tell me something I don't want to hear. Such as, I met her gaze, that he doesn't love me anymore. Naomi reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her touch was warm and comforting. Or maybe he's going through something he doesn't know how to talk about. Men aren't always great at expressing their emotions. Maybe. I didn't sound convinced, even to myself. "Listen," Naomi said, leaning forward. "Why don't you 2 come to dinner at my place this weekend? Sometimes being in a different environment helps. And I make a mean coq au vin." I blinked in surprise. "You want to have us over for dinner?" "Why not? We're friends, aren't we?" She smiled, and something in her expression made me feel seen in a way I hadn't in months. "Saturday night, 7 o'clock. I'll have to check with Elias, but that would be nice." "Thank you." As we walked back to the office, Naomi linked her arm through mine. "It's going to be okay, Vanessa. Whatever's happening, you're strong enough to handle it." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. To my surprise, Elias agreed to dinner at Naomi's without hesitation. "Naomi from your office?" he asked as he knotted his tie on Saturday evening. "The senior associate candidate?" "Yes," I said, applying lipstick in the bathroom mirror. "We've been having lunch together sometimes. I think we're becoming friends." Elias caught my eye in the mirror. "That's nice. You haven't had a close friend since Meredith moved to Seattle." The observation stung because it was true. I'd been so focused on my career, on our marriage, that my social circle had dwindled to almost nothing. "Are you sure you're okay with this?" I asked. "We can cancel if you'd rather stay in." "No, it's fine." He adjusted his collar. "It'll be good to get out. Meet new people." Something in his tone made me look at him more closely. There was a nervous energy to him that I hadn't seen in a long time. A slight flush to his cheeks, an extra care to his appearance. "You look nice," I said softly. He glanced at me, seeming almost startled. "Thanks, so do you." The compliment, simple as it was, made my heart flutter. When was the last time he had really looked at me? Naomi's apartment was in a renovated warehouse downtown, all exposed brick and industrial fixtures softened with plush rugs and ambient lighting. She greeted us at the door in a flowing emerald dress, her hair loose around her shoulders. "Welcome," she said, kissing my cheek and then Elias's. "I'm so glad you could come." She ushered us into her spacious living area where a table was set for 3, candles flickering in the center. Jazz played softly in the background. "Your place is beautiful," I said, taking in the art on the walls. Abstract pieces in bold colors. "Thank you. Most of the art is my brother's work. He's in Berlin now." She handed us each a glass of wine. Elias, Vanessa tells me you're a defense attorney? That's right, he said, and I was surprised to hear a warmth in his voice that had been absent in our home. Criminal defense primarily. That must be fascinating, Naomi said, guiding us to sit at the table. All those stories, all those lives. As she served the food, which was indeed impressive, Naomi drew Elias out in a way I hadn't been able to in months. She asked about his cases, his opinions on recent legal developments, his background. I grew up in Portland, he was saying, gesturing with his wine glass. My father was a judge, so I guess law was in the blood. And that's where you two met? In Portland? Naomi asked, looking between us. Law school in Chicago, actually, I said. We were competing for the same clerkship. Which Vanessa got, Elias added with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. You were the better student, I said, trying to keep my tone light. Judge Brennan just liked me better. She was always the charmer, Elias said to Naomi, who laughed. I can believe that, she said, refilling our glasses. She's certainly charmed everyone at the firm. The evening continued pleasantly, the conversation flowing more easily than it had in our home for months. I watched as Elias animated, gesturing as he told stories, laughing at Naomi's witty observations. A knot formed in my stomach. Why couldn't he be like this with me anymore? When Naomi excused herself to prepare dessert, I followed to help, leaving Elias examining her bookshelf. This was a lovely idea, I said as she plated slices of chocolate torte. I haven't seen him this relaxed in ages, Naomi smiled. Sometimes we just need a change of scenery. A fresh perspective. Still, thank you. It means a lot. She touched my arm, her fingers lingering. What are friends for? When we returned, Elias was looking at a framed photograph. Your family? He asked Naomi. Yes, from my sister's wedding last year. That's my mother, my father, and my brother Daniel, the artist. You have his eyes, Elias said, and something in his tone made me glance at him sharply. There was an intensity to his gaze that I recognized, or thought I did. It had been so long since he'd looked at me that way. Do I? Naomi laughed lightly. I always thought I took after my mother. As we ate dessert, I noticed how Elias's eyes kept returning to Naomi, how he leaned forward when she spoke, how he laughed too readily at her jokes. Or was I imagining it? Had months of distance made me paranoid? On the drive home, Elias was quiet again, the animation of the evening fading like a receding tide. That was nice, I ventured. Naomi's interesting, isn't she? Yes, she seems nice. His response was distracted, non-committal. I turned to look out the window, watching the city lights blur past. The evening had given me a glimpse of the man I'd married, engaged, charismatic, present. But it had also planted a seed of doubt that would grow in the weeks to come. Over the next month, Naomi became a regular presence in our lives. Coffee dates turned into lunch meetings. Weekend brunches became movie nights at our place or hers. Elias, who had shown little interest in socializing for months, never objected to these gatherings. In fact, he seemed to look forward to them. I told myself it was a good thing, that our marriage needed this injection of new energy, this connection to someone outside our increasingly claustrophobic twosome. But I couldn't ignore how Elias would check his phone more frequently on days when Naomi was expected. How he would suggest we invite her along when we had plans. How his mood would lift noticeably in her presence. One evening, as we prepared for another dinner at Naomi's apartment, I watched Elias select a tie with unusual care. The blue one looks better with that shirt, I said from the doorway of our bedroom. He glanced at me, then back at the mirror. You think so? Yes, it brings out your eyes. I paused. You're putting a lot of effort into dinner with a colleague. Elias's hand stilled on his tie. She's your friend, not just a colleague. Is that how you see her? As my friend? His eyes met mine in the mirror. What are you asking, Vanessa? I took a deep breath. I've noticed how you are around her. How you... Light up. He turned to face me. And that bothers you? Should it? Elias sighed, running a hand through his hair. Naomi is interesting and engaging. She asks questions and actually listens to the answers. Is it so strange that I enjoy her company? The implication hung in the air between us. Unlike you, his words seemed to say. I enjoy her company unlike yours. No, I said finally. It's not strange. But as we drove to Naomi's in silence, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted in our marriage. And that Naomi was at the center of that shift. At work, Naomi and I were assigned to the same high-profile case, a corporate fraud lawsuit that could make or break our chances at the senior associate position. We spent long hours together, poring over documents, building our strategy. We should celebrate, Naomi said one evening as we packed up after a particularly productive session. The motion hearing is tomorrow, and thanks to your brilliant argument, we're going to win. I smiled, warmed by her praise. Despite my growing unease about her relationship with Elias, I couldn't deny that I enjoyed working with Naomi. She was sharp, insightful, and generous with credit. What did you have in mind? I asked. Dinner at my place? I'll invite Elias too, of course. I hesitated. Actually, he's out of town. Conference in Boston until Friday. Perfect, Naomi said, her eyes brightening. Just us girls then. We can open that bottle of champagne I've been saving and not have to listen to legal war stories all night. I laughed. That sounds nice. But maybe another night. I'm exhausted. A flicker of disappointment crossed Naomi's face. Of course. Rain check. As we walked to the elevator, Naomi's phone chimed. She glanced at it, then quickly tucked it away, but not before I caught a glimpse of Elias's name on the screen. My stomach dropped. Why was my husband texting my colleague while supposedly in conference sessions? Everything okay? Naomi asked, noticing my expression. Fine, I said, forcing a smile. Just thinking about tomorrow's hearing. That night, I lay awake in our empty bed, my mind racing. Was I being paranoid? Was there an innocent explanation for why Elias would be texting Naomi? Perhaps they were planning a surprise for me, a birthday gift or an anniversary celebration. But my birthday was months away. And our anniversary, Elias had forgotten it last year. I reached for my phone and typed out a message to him. How's the conference? His reply came quickly. Boring presentations. Missing you. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they felt hollow, performative. When had he last told me he missed me and meant it? I set the phone down without responding and stared at the ceiling until dawn broke. We won the motion hearing the next day. Charles Matthews himself congratulated us, hinting that this victory would be remembered when it came time to decide on the senior associate position. We're going out for drinks, he announced to the team. First rounds on the firm. At the upscale bar near our office, I found myself seated next to Naomi, both of us flush with success and a bit tipsy on expensive champagne. To the dream team, she said, clinking her glass against mine. We're unstoppable together. To the dream team, I echoed, studying her face. In the dim lighting, her features were softer, more vulnerable. It was hard to imagine her as a threat to my marriage. Vanessa, she said, leaning closer. Can I tell you something? My heart raced. Was this it? Was she going to confess to an attraction to my husband? To an emotional affair or worse? Of course, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. I've never had a friend like you. Her words were slightly slurred, her eyes earnest. Someone who gets me, you know. The work, the ambition, the drive. Most women find me intimidating or competitive. I blinked, thrown by the direction of the conversation. I feel the same way. Do you? She reached for my hand, squeezing it. Because sometimes I feel like you're pulling away. Like you don't trust me. Guilt washed over me. Was I projecting my insecurities onto an innocent friendship? Was the distance in my marriage making me see threats where there were none? I'm sorry, I said. It's not you. I've been going through some stuff with Elias. It's made me wary. Naomi's expression shifted, a shadow crossing her features. Has he said something about me? No, I said quickly. No, nothing like that. She seemed to relax. Good, because I value both of you. Your friendship and his. The way she separated us, your friendship and his, sent a chill through me. Before I could respond, Charles called for another toast, and the moment passed. But as the night wore on, I found myself watching Naomi more closely, noticing how she checked her phone under the table, how she seemed distracted despite our victory. When I got home that night, I did something I'd never done before. I opened Elias's laptop. His password had been the same for years, the name of his childhood dog followed by his birth year. The familiarity of it gave me a pang. Once we'd known everything about each other. Now, I was searching his computer for evidence of betrayal. His email revealed nothing suspicious. His browser history was mundane: news sites, legal databases, sports scores. I was about to close the laptop, feeling both relieved and ashamed, when I noticed the chat icon on his desktop. The messaging app opened to a conversation with Naomi. My hands trembled as I scrolled up to read their exchanges. Most were innocuous. Questions about dinner plans, links to articles they thought the other might find interesting, comments about cases they were working on. But there were other messages too. Late-night exchanges that seemed coded, laden with subtext. Naomi. Thinking about our conversation today. Elias. Me too. It's rare to find someone who really listens. Naomi. Do you ever wonder about different choices? Different paths? Elias. More and more lately. It wasn't explicit. There were no declarations of love, no plans to meet secretly. But the intimacy was there, humming beneath the surface of their words. An emotional connection that had once existed between Elias and me, now redirected toward another woman. I closed the laptop, my vision blurred with tears. Was this how a marriage ended? Not with dramatic betrayals, but with quiet redirections of attention, of affection, of trust. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't face Naomi, not yet. Not until I decided what to do with what I'd discovered. Elias called around noon, his voice concerned. Naomi said you weren't in the office. Are you okay? The fact that he'd checked in with her first, not me, told me everything I needed to know. Just a migraine, I said. I'll be fine tomorrow. Do you need anything? Should I come home early? No, I said quickly. The conference is important. I'm just going to sleep it off. After we hung up, I sat in our silent house, thinking about the years we'd spent together. The love we'd built. The life we'd planned. Was I ready to let all of that go? Or was there still something worth fighting for? I made a decision then. I wouldn't confront them yet. I would watch and wait and see if what was happening between them was truly what I feared. And if it was, I would need evidence. Not just for any potential divorce proceedings, but for myself. To know that I wasn't crazy. That what I sensed was real. The next day, I returned to work as if nothing had changed. I smiled at Naomi, discussed our case, agreed to another dinner at her place that weekend. Elias gets back on Friday, she said. Should we make it Saturday? Perfect, I replied, watching her eyes for any sign, any tell. He'll be happy to see you. She held my gaze for a beat too long. And I'll be happy to see him. The words hung between us, a challenge or a confession. I couldn't be sure. The days until Saturday crawled by. Elias returned from Boston late Friday night, bringing me a small gift, a snow globe of the Boston skyline. It was a thoughtless present, the kind you grab at an airport gift shop as an afterthought. Thank you, I said, setting it on our dresser. How was the conference? Productive, he said, unpacking his suitcase. How are you feeling? Better? Much better. I watched as he sorted his clothes, his movements methodical. Looking forward to dinner at Naomi's tomorrow. He glanced at me, his expression guarded. Sure, it's always a good time. I nodded, saying nothing more. The distance between us in that moment felt vast, unbridgeable. That night, I lay awake beside him, listening to his steady breathing. Once I would have curled against him, seeking the comfort of his warmth. Now, I stayed on my side of the bed, a cold expanse of sheets between us. Morning came, and with it a sense of dread. Whatever was happening between Elias and Naomi, tonight would bring it into sharper focus. I dressed with care, a deep blue dress that once had been Elias's favorite, pearl earrings he'd given me for our 3rd anniversary. "You look nice," he said as we prepared to leave, the same words he'd used before our first dinner at Naomi's. This time, they felt like a courtesy, an obligation. "Thanks," I replied, slipping on my coat. "So do you." Naomi greeted us warmly, her apartment filled with the aroma of roasting chicken and herbs. She wore a simple black dress that somehow looked more elegant than anything in my closet. Come in," she said, taking our coats. "Elias, would you open the wine?" "Vanessa, come help me in the kitchen." In the kitchen, Naomi moved with grace, checking the oven, stirring a sauce on the stove. "How are things?" she asked, her voice low. "With Elias, I mean." I busied myself arranging bread on a platter. "The same. Maybe a little better." "I'm glad," she said, but there was something in her tone. Satisfaction? Relief? That made me look at her more closely. "Naomi," I began, not sure what I was going to say. She turned to me, her expression open, guileless. Before I could continue, Elias appeared in the doorway, 3 wine glasses in hand. "Ladies," he said, setting them down. "What can I do to help?" "Just keep us company," Naomi said, flashing him a smile. Throughout dinner, I watched them interact. The way Naomi leaned toward Elias when he spoke. The way his eyes followed her as she moved around the table. The private jokes, the shared glances. It was subtle, but unmistakable, a current of connection from which I was excluded. After the meal, Naomi suggested we move to the living room for dessert. "Vanessa, would you mind bringing the coffee? I left it brewing in the kitchen." I nodded, gathering our plates. As I headed to the kitchen, I glanced back to see Elias follow Naomi to the living room, his hand hovering at the small of her back, not quite touching, but close enough. In the kitchen, I set the dishes in the sink, my hands shaking. This was real. Whatever was happening between them was real. The realization hit me with physical force, leaving me breathless. I needed to know for certain. I pulled out my phone and opened the camera app, switching to video mode. Then, leaving it recording on the counter, I poured coffee into 3 cups and prepared to return to the living room. But as I reached the doorway, I stopped. Through the partially open door, I could see them standing by the window. They weren't touching, but the tension between them was palpable, electric. "We can't keep doing this," Naomi was saying, her voice barely audible. "I know," Elias replied, "but I can't stop thinking about you." My heart pounded in my chest. I should interrupt them now, confront them with what I'd heard. But something kept me rooted to the spot. "What about Vanessa?" Naomi asked. Elias sighed deeply. "I don't know. I don't want to hurt her." But this is hurting her too. The distance, the lies. They're not lies exactly, aren't they? Naomi's voice was sharp. "You told her you were at a conference all week." "I was at a conference, just not every day. My blood ran cold. While I'd been at work, imagining him in Boston, he'd been here. With her. We need to decide what this is," Naomi continued. "What we want it to be." Elias stepped closer to her. "I know what I want." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. Couldn't tear my eyes away as my husband reached up and gently, tenderly, caressed Naomi's face. His thumb traced her cheekbone, a gesture so intimate it felt like a physical blow. Naomi leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. Then she stepped back, shaking her head. "Not like this. Not while you're still with her." "I need time," Elias said, "to figure out how to tell her. How to end it without destroying her." The coffee cup slipped from my hands, crashing to the floor. The sound shattered the moment, sending both Elias and Naomi whirling toward the doorway. I stood there, coffee seeping into my shoes, fragments of porcelain scattered at my feet. "Vanessa," Elias said, his face draining of color. "It's not what you think." It was such a cliché, such a pathetic denial that a laugh escaped me, high and brittle. "Really?" "Because I think my husband is having an affair with my colleague. I think he's been lying to me about business trips while he's been with her. I think they've been discussing how to end our marriage." My voice was surprisingly steady. Am I wrong? Naomi stepped forward, her hands raised placatingly. Vanessa, please. Let us explain. Explain what? I looked between them. These two people I'd trusted. How long you've been sleeping together? How many times you've laughed at me behind my back? It's not like that, Elias said, moving toward me. We haven't physically... Oh, so it's just an emotional affair? That's supposed to make me feel better? He flinched as if I'd struck him. I didn't plan this. We didn't plan this. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, Elias. You made choices. Every time you texted her instead of talking to me, every time you lied about where you were, I turned to Naomi. And you, pretending to be my friend while you stole my husband? I am your friend, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I care about you, Vanessa. That wasn't a lie. Was anything real? I asked, the calm beginning to crack, my voice breaking. All those lunches, those conversations, was it all just to get closer to him? No. Naomi shook her head vehemently. No, it wasn't like that at all. I genuinely care for both of you. Both of us, I repeated bitterly. How convenient. Elias took another step toward me. Vanessa, please. Let's go home and talk about this. I backed away from him. I'm not going anywhere with you. In fact, I reached for my purse, retrieving my phone. I think you two should see something. I stopped the recording and played it back for them, watching their faces as they heard their own voices, their own damning words. Elias paled further, while Naomi covered her mouth with her hand. You recorded us? Elias asked, shock evident in his tone. Yes, and I've already sent a copy to my email. It was a bluff. I hadn't had time to send anything. But they didn't know that. Why? Naomi asked. Because I've been feeling crazy for months, doubting myself, my instincts. Now I have proof that I wasn't imagining things. I put the phone back in my purse. I'm leaving. Don't follow me, Elias. Don't come home tonight. As I turned to go, Naomi caught my arm. Vanessa, wait! I yanked free from her grasp. If you touch me again, I will not be responsible for my actions. The threat hung in the air, electric and dangerous. Naomi stepped back, her face stricken. I'll get my coat, I said, moving past them to the hall closet. My hands were steady as I buttoned my coat, as I gathered my purse, as I walked to the door. It was only when I reached my car that the trembling began, violent shudders that racked my entire body. I gripped the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the waves of panic, of rage, of grief. My phone buzzed with texts from Elias, then began to ring. I silenced it and started the car. I needed space, distance. Time to think clearly about what I'd learned, about what came next. I drove aimlessly for hours, eventually finding myself at a hotel near the airport. The room was impersonal, sterile, a fitting backdrop for the numbness that had settled over me. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I finally looked at my phone. 6 missed calls from Elias, 4 from Naomi, dozens of text messages from Elias. Please come home. We need to talk. From Elias. It's not what you think. Nothing physical happened. From Elias. I'm so sorry. Please call me. From Naomi. Vanessa, I'm sorry. This isn't how I wanted you to find out. From Naomi. Please let us explain. From Naomi. I never wanted to hurt you. I turned off my phone and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. 6 years of marriage. 3 years of working with Naomi. How long had they been betraying me? Weeks? Months? Had anything in my life been real? I must have fallen asleep because I woke to daylight streaming through the curtains. For one blessed moment, I didn't remember where I was or why. Then it all came rushing back. The caress, the conversation, the confession. I turned on my phone to find more messages, increasingly desperate. From Elias. I'm at home. Please come back so we can talk. From Elias. I'm worried about you. Just let me know you're safe. From Elias. I love you, Vanessa. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. The last message made me laugh bitterly. Love? He didn't know the meaning of the word. I showered and dressed in yesterday's clothes, my mind clearer than it had been in months. I knew what I needed to do. First, I called Charles Matthews. Vanessa, he answered, surprise in his tone. It's Sunday. I know, sir. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I need to speak with you about something important. Something personal. There was a pause. Go on. I need to be removed from any cases with Naomi Chen, effective immediately. May I ask why? I took a deep breath. I've discovered that she's been having an inappropriate relationship with my husband. It's created a conflict of interest that I can no longer ignore. Silence stretched between us. Then, I see. This is unexpected. Are you sure about this accusation? Yes, sir. I have evidence. The recording on my phone felt like a weapon, one I wasn't sure I was ready to use. But I'd prefer not to share the details unless absolutely necessary. Another pause. Very well. I'll reassign your cases tomorrow. And Vanessa, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. Next, I called a locksmith. By the time I arrived at our home, the home Elias and I had shared for 5 years, the locks had been changed. Elias's car was not in the driveway. Inside, the house felt different. Hollow, echoing with memories that now seemed suspect. Had he been thinking of her even then? When we'd made dinner together, when we'd made love, when we'd made plans for the future. I moved through the rooms methodically, gathering Elias's essential items, clothes, toiletries, his laptop, important documents. I packed them into suitcases and boxes, working with a detachment that surprised me. When I was finished, I called a lawyer, not from my firm, but one recommended by a colleague years ago for her work in high-conflict divorces. I made an appointment for the following day. Then I sat in our living room, my living room now, and waited. It was nearly evening when Elias's key failed in the lock. I heard his confusion, then the doorbell. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. Your things are packed, I said, my voice even. They're in the garage. I've changed the locks. Elias stood on our porch, his hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed. Vanessa, please. We need to talk about this. We have nothing to talk about. My lawyer will be in touch. Lawyer? His face crumpled. You're filing for divorce? Just like that? Just like that? I repeated incredulously. You've been having an affair with my colleague, Elias. You've been lying to me for months. What did you expect? I expected you to at least hear me out, he said, a note of anger entering his voice. To give me a chance to explain. Explain what? I heard everything I needed to hear last night. You don't want to be with me anymore. You want to be with her? It's not that simple. Actually, it is. I stepped back, preparing to close the door. Your things are in the garage. I'll open it for you. Vanessa, wait, he said, his hand stopping the door. The recording. What are you going to do with it? So that was what he was worried about. Not me, not our marriage, but the evidence of his betrayal. I haven't decided yet, I said coolly. It depends on how you handle this divorce. If you try to take what isn't yours, if you drag this out, well, I'm sure Charles would be very interested to hear how his 2 associates have been conducting themselves. It was a threat, plain and simple. One that could damage both Elias's and Naomi's careers. It wasn't like me to be vindictive, but then I wasn't the same person I had been yesterday. Elias's face hardened. You wouldn't. Try me. I met his gaze steadily. Now, do you want your things, or should I donate them to charity? He stepped back, defeat evident in the slump of his shoulders. I'll get my things. I opened the garage door with the remote and watched as he loaded boxes and suitcases into his car. We didn't speak again. When he was done, he looked back at the house, our house, one last time, then drove away. That night, I deleted Naomi's number from my phone. I removed all photos of Elias from our home, packing them into a box that I stored in the attic. I changed my email password, my social media accounts, my banking information. It was like excising a tumor, painful, but necessary for survival. The next day, I met with the lawyer, Diane Robertson, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a reputation for ruthless efficiency. You have evidence of the affair? She asked after I'd outlined the situation. Yes, I said, placing my phone on her desk. A recording of them discussing their relationship and how to end my marriage. She listened to the recording, her expression impassive. When it was finished, she nodded. This is good, very good. It establishes emotional infidelity at minimum and suggests possible physical infidelity as well. It also shows premeditation to end the marriage, which can be useful in negotiations. I want this over quickly, I said. I don't care about most of our assets. I just want the house and a fair division of our savings. And I want him to pay the legal fees. Diane made notes. That's reasonable. With this evidence, I think we can achieve a swift resolution. Mr. Hayes would be foolish to contest anything, given what this recording could do to his professional reputation. And Naomi's, I added. Yes, Diane agreed, though she's not party to the divorce, of course. Of course. As I left Diane's office, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered cautiously, Vanessa Hayes? A man's voice, formal and clipped. Yes? This is Richard Chen, Naomi's father. I was hoping we could meet. I stopped walking, stunned by the request. Mr. Chen, I don't think that would be appropriate under the circumstances. I understand your reluctance, he said, but I believe it would be beneficial for both of us. I'll be at the Meridian Hotel at 6 this evening. Please consider joining me. He hung up before I could respond. I stood on the sidewalk, conflicted. Why would Naomi's father want to meet with me? What could he possibly have to say that would matter now? Curiosity won out over caution. At 6 sharp, I entered the elegant lobby of the Meridian Hotel. Richard Chen sat in a corner, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver-streaked hair and Naomi's dark, intelligent eyes. Mrs. Hayes, he said, rising to shake my hand. Thank you for coming, Mr. Chen, I replied, taking the seat opposite him. I have to admit I'm curious about why you wanted to see me. He signaled to a waiter who brought us each a glass of whiskey. I'll be direct, Mrs. Hayes. My daughter has made a grave error in judgment, one that has caused you considerable pain. I took a sip of the amber liquid, feeling it burn down my throat. That's putting it mildly. Indeed. He studied me thoughtfully. Naomi has always been impulsive, passionate. When she wants something, she pursues it with single-minded determination. And she wanted my husband, I said flatly. Richard Chen nodded. So it seems, but what she failed to consider were the consequences. Not just for you and Mr. Hayes, but for herself, for our family. I'm not sure I understand. He leaned forward slightly. Our family has certain expectations, certain standards. Naomi's behavior has fallen far short of those standards. I'm sorry, Mr. Chen, but why are you telling me this? Because I want to offer you something. He reached into his jacket and withdrew an envelope, placing it on the table between us. In exchange for your discretion. I stared at the envelope, comprehension dawning. You're trying to buy my silence. I prefer to think of it as compensation for your distress. His voice was smooth, practiced. The amount is substantial. Enough to start fresh somewhere new if that's what you wish. I left the envelope untouched. And what exactly am I supposed to be discreet about? The affair is hardly a secret now. The recording, he said simply. I understand you have evidence of my daughter's indiscretion. Evidence that could damage her career, her reputation. I was stunned. How do you know about the recording? Naomi told me, of course. She's quite distraught about the whole situation. He gestured to the envelope. This offer is contingent upon the deletion of that recording and any copies you may have made. A legal agreement to that effect is enclosed. And if I refuse? Richard Chen's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. I would strongly advise against that course of action, Mrs. Hayes. My family has considerable resources and influence. It would be unfortunate if this personal matter were to escalate. The threat was veiled but unmistakable. I felt a chill run through me, followed by a surge of anger. Let me be clear, Mr. Chen, I said, keeping my voice level. I have no intention of sharing that recording unless provoked. My only goal is to divorce my husband with as little drama as possible and move on with my life. But if you, or Naomi, or Elias attempt to threaten or intimidate me again, I will not hesitate to use every resource at my disposal to protect myself. Is that understood? We stared at each other for a long moment, two opponents sizing each other up across a battlefield. Finally, he nodded, a hint of respect in his eyes. Perfectly understood, Mrs. Hayes. I stood, leaving the envelope on the table. Good evening, Mr. Chen. As I walked away, he called after me. She did care for you, you know, in her way. I paused, but didn't turn back. Just not enough, I said, and continued toward the exit. The divorce proceedings were swift and surprisingly civilized. Elias, perhaps warned by Naomi's father about my resolve, agreed to all my terms without contest. The house was mine. Our savings were divided equally. He even paid the legal fees as requested. At work, I was reassigned to different cases, different teams. Naomi and I moved in separate orbits, acknowledging each other with cool professionalism when our paths crossed. There were whispers, of course, curious glances, but no one dared ask me directly what had happened. Charles Matthews called me into his office a week after the divorce was finalized. Vanessa, he said, gesturing for me to sit. I want to discuss the senior associate position. My heart sank. I had assumed that with everything that had happened, my chances had been compromised. Yes, sir? The partners have made their decision. He paused, watching me carefully. We'd like to offer you the position. I blinked in surprise. Me? Not Naomi? Ms. Chen has removed herself from consideration. She's accepted a position with a firm in Los Angeles. Charles leaned back in his chair. Between us, I think she felt that continuing here would be awkward. I see, I said, processing this new information. When does she leave? She already has. Friday was her last day. I hadn't noticed her absence in the busy law firm where we'd worked together for 3 years. The realization was oddly liberating. So, the position, Charles continued. Are you interested? Yes, I said without hesitation. Yes, I am. Excellent. He smiled, standing to shake my hand. Congratulations, Senior Associate Hayes. Later, that day, as I packed up my office for the move to a larger space on the executive floor, I received a text message from an unknown number. Congratulations on the promotion. You deserve it. I'm sorry for everything. And I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. 3 months later, I was sorting through mail when I found a thick cream envelope addressed to Elias Hayes. It had been forwarded from his new address, an apartment across town where he now lived alone. Naomi, it seemed, had not followed through on leaving her husband for him. The envelope contained a wedding invitation. Benjamin Chen, Naomi's brother, was getting married in Bali the following spring. The invitation was addressed to both Elias and me, a social courtesy from a time when we were still a couple, still friends with the Chen family. I placed the invitation on the kitchen counter and looked around my home, bright with afternoon sunlight, peaceful in its solitude. I had redecorated, replacing furniture that held too many memories, painting walls in colors I'd always preferred, but Elias had vetoed. My phone rang, displaying my lawyer's name. Diane, I answered. What can I do for you? Just checking in, Vanessa. Making sure everything's still proceeding smoothly with the property transfer. It is. The last of the paperwork should be signed next week. Good, good. And how are you doing? Generally, I mean. I considered the question, thinking about the past months, the pain, the betrayal, the rebuilding. I'm okay, I said finally. Better than I expected to be, actually. I'm glad to hear it. These things are never easy. After we hung up, I picked up the wedding invitation again, running my finger over the embossed lettering. Then, deliberately, I tore it in half and dropped the pieces into the recycling bin. That evening, as the sun set over the city, I sat on my porch with a glass of wine, looking at the neighborhood where Elias and I had planned to build our life together. Children played on the sidewalk. Couples walked dogs. Life continued, as it always did. My phone buzzed with a text message from a colleague, inviting me to dinner the following week. A casual gathering. Nothing romantic. Just friends enjoying each other's company. "I'd like that," I replied, and meant it. The recording of Elias and Naomi remained on my phone, a digital ghost I couldn't quite exorcise. Someday I would delete it. Someday when the wound had fully healed, when the memory no longer had power over me. But not today. Today I sipped my wine and watched the sunset, alone but not lonely, broken but mending, betrayed but not defeated. Tomorrow would be another day, another step forward, another chance to reclaim the life that was always meant to be mine.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.